My beloved, precious child, I have called you by name. You are not forgotten. You are chosen for such a time as this. Why do bad things happen to good people? Not just, why do bad things happen? But why, specifically, to the ones who try their best to live right, to love right, to give without expecting, to carry burdens that aren't even their own. You don't ask that question from a mountaintop. You ask it from the valley, when life has punched the air out of your lungs, and all the well-meaning encouragement in the world can't touch the weight you're carrying. You gave, you served, you prayed, and still it feels like the universe turned its back. You watched others cut corners, lie, manipulate, cheat, and yet they're the ones smiling, thriving, rising. You start asking dangerous questions. What's the point of being good? Is God even watching? Am I being punished for trusting too much? For hoping too hard? You hear things like God's timing or everything happens for a reason. But those phrases start to feel empty when your heart is breaking and your spirit is tired. You wonder if you were naive for believing goodness would shield you from pain. But I want to tell you something today, not from a pedestal, not from a perfect life, from pain, from process, from purpose, from standing exactly where you are now and having come through it. There's something you've been missing, something we were never taught in the feel good messages, something the surface level advice can't reach. It's this: your pain does not mean you're being punished. Your suffering does not mean you've failed. And your struggle is not evidence of your weakness. In fact, it might be evidence of your greatness. Let's go deeper. You were raised with the belief, spoken or unspoken, that life is a fair game, that if you plant good seeds, you'll harvest good fruit. And most of the time, that's true. But life isn't a transaction. It's a transformation. And transformation is not painless. Ask gold what it feels like to be purifying. Ask diamonds what pressure feels like. Ask trees how deep their roots had to go when the winds wouldn't stop. Ask the butterfly what it cost to leave the cocoon. The deeper the transformation, the more uncomfortable the process. So, when bad things happen to good people, it's not always about justice. It's about journey, the journey of who you're becoming. There's a quiet, hidden truth that doesn't fit on Instagram quotes or bumper stickers. And it's this: the most powerful people you'll ever meet have suffered deeply. And not just once. Not just in ways the world could see, but in ways only they and God will ever truly understand. They were betrayed, tested, mocked, stretched to the edge of breaking, and sometimes beyond it. And yet, when you look at them, there's something different, something deeper, a kind of peace that doesn't come from ease, but from endurance. But no one talks about the fire they had to walk through to get there. Pain will visit everyone, but pain doesn't transform everyone. That part is a choice. You can allow pain to harden you, to close your heart, to shrink your spirit. Or you can use it as fuel. Let it expand your compassion, sharpen your vision, strengthen your faith. Here's what no one tells you. God never wastes pain, not a single drop. Even in your worst moment, when everything felt like it was falling apart, He was building something deeper inside you. And no, I'm not saying He caused the pain, but He'll use it to grow you, to root you, to reveal you. Think of Joseph, betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused, thrown into prison, forgotten, years of faithful living, and still everything fell apart. But what Joseph didn't know in the pit was that a palace was waiting. What he didn't see in the prison was that provision for an entire nation was being positioned. And in the end, what did he say to the ones who tried to destroy him? You meant it for evil, but God meant it for good. That's not a man who avoided pain. That's a man who converted it. Pain isn't the enemy. It's how you carry it that matters. What if your hardest season is the ground floor of your greatest assignment? What if the betrayal was the door to your breakthrough? The delay was a lesson in divine timing? The silence was space for something deeper to grow? You're not forgotten. You're not overlooked. You're being refined. And yes, it hurts. Refining always does. But on the other side of this fire is a version of you that's stronger, wiser, more whole. So the question isn't, why is this happening to me? The question is, who am I becoming through this? It's strange how suffering exposes what success can't. See, comfort can make us forget who we are. But struggle? Struggle remembers. Struggle strips away the surface, the masks, the noise, the performance, and it introduces us to the version of ourselves we never knew existed. The one who's stronger, wiser, calmer, braver. But we don't meet that person in good times. We meet them when the light goes out, when the friends leave, when the answers don't come, when the path disappears and all you're left with is you and God. And in those moments, those brutally honest, heart-wide open moments, you start to see clearly. The distractions fade. The pretending stops. The pressure breaks what's fake. And what remains is real. That's why the weight you feel right now isn't wasted. It's not a punishment. It's a mirror. It's showing you what you're made of and what you're meant for. The truth is, you're not being buried. You're being planted. And what's planted in pressure doesn't die. It multiplies. I want to talk to those of you who've been doing everything right, but feel like your life is still on pause. You stayed pure. You honored people. You forgave when it cost you. And still, doors closed. Still, you were left behind. Still, you got passed over. You're not imagining it. You've been faithful, but the fruit hasn't shown up yet. Let me remind you of something powerful. Just because it hasn't happened yet doesn't mean it won't. Delay is not denial, and silence is not absence. Some of God's greatest moves begin in silence. Moses waited 40 years. David ran from cave to cave for over a decade. Abraham waited decades for a promise. Even Jesus waited 30 years before his public purpose was revealed. So, what makes us think we're exempt from the wait? The delay is doing something in you. It's stretching your faith, teaching you trust, burning off impatience, refining your motives. Because what good is a breakthrough if your character can't carry it? What good is wealth if your soul is poor? What good is a platform if your heart's still fragile? God cares more about who you're becoming than what you're achieving. And if you feel like you've been walking through a slow season, a silent one, don't confuse slowness with stillness. There is movement happening beneath the surface. You are growing in invisible ways. And when that growth finally reaches the surface, people will call it sudden. But you'll know it wasn't sudden at all. It was the result of choosing faith in obscurity, choosing peace in the middle of pressure, choosing goodness even when it seemed to cost you everything. There's something sacred about that choice. To do right, not for reward, not for applause, but because it's right. That's the kind of goodness that moves heaven. And that's the kind of person God trusts with greater things. See, there's a difference between being blessed and being trusted. Everyone wants blessings. Few are ready to be trusted. Blessing is external. Trust is internal. Blessing can be given. Trust must be built. And trust is built when you keep showing up with faith when nothing makes sense. That's why some of the hardest seasons are actually signs of divine trust. God sees something in you, something deep, something solid. You don't give delicate assignments to fragile vessels. You give it to the ones who've been tested. So if your journey has been heavy, if your road has been steep, if the battles have come wave after wave, ask yourself, what am I being prepared to carry? Because maybe the weight is shaping your capacity. Maybe this season isn't about what you're losing. Maybe it's about what you're learning. Maybe it's less about who left you and more about what was revealed when they did. Maybe it's not that you're behind. Maybe you're right on schedule for something bigger than you expected. There's a parable you've probably heard. The house built on sand and the house built on rock. Both houses were hit by the storm, but only one stood. The storm didn't discriminate, but the foundation determined the future. God isn't sparing you from the storm. He's helping you become the kind of person who stands through it. Because what He's building in you isn't fragile. It's not shallow. It's not a quick fix or a one-time breakthrough. It's eternal. That's why the refining feels so intense. Because the purpose is eternal. What you learn in this season, the patience, the strength, the vision, it will serve you for the rest of your life. You are not being punished. You are being positioned. And when the storm passes, because it will, you'll see clearly what all this was for. You've come a long way through this message, not just in words, but in perspective. You've felt the weight. You've seen your reflection in the storm. You've realized you're not alone in asking the hard questions. And maybe, for the first time in a long time, you feel seen, because you're not just a good person who's had bad things happen. You're a living testimony. a builder of strength, a carrier of light, a seed planted in the fire, growing in silence, destined to rise. You're not fragile. You're forged. You were never meant to live a life of comfort without meaning. You were meant to walk through this fire and come out changed, charged, and called. And that's exactly what you're doing. You've walked through disappointment, but you still dream. You've been betrayed, but you still love. You've been overlooked, but you still show up. That's power. That's character. That's spiritual authority. Because the enemy's goal was never just to hurt you. It was to harden you, to close your heart, to convince you that God forgot you. But you didn't let that happen. You stayed tender. You kept going. You kept seeking. And that is where the story shifts. When you understand that pain is not the end, but the beginning of awakening, everything changes. You stop asking, "Why me?" And you start declaring, "Now I see. Now I see that heartbreak wasn't punishment. It was redirection. Now I see that silence wasn't absence. It was incubation. Now I see that being broken didn't destroy me. It delivered me into a higher version of myself. Now I see that maybe I wasn't being buried. I was being planted. And now I'm ready to grow, but not just emotionally, not just spiritually, in every area of life. Because once your soul wakes up, once your eyes adjust to truth, you start noticing something else. The need to build, to take the wisdom, the scars, the fire, and do something with it. To stop waiting for perfect timing and start compounding the lessons. To multiply what you've been given, even the pain, into purpose. You start understanding. Everything I've endured has taught me something. Every loss has sharpened me. Every delay has prepared me. Every detour has strengthened me. Now it's time to grow forward. So here's the question that will carry you beyond this video. What will you do with what you've learned? Because clarity without action is just comfort. But clarity with action, that's transformation. And if you want transformation in your finances, in your relationships, in your mindset, in your faith, there's one principle you must master. It's not sexy. It's not viral. But it is the secret to every lasting result. It's called compounding. Yes, the same law that grows wealth also grows wisdom. The same law that builds empires also builds character. Consistency plus wisdom plus time equal exponential growth. It works with money. It works with faith. It works with everything. That's the next step. You've endured the pain. You've processed the question. Now, it's time to build the answer. I want to personally invite you to watch the next video on my channel. It's called The Power of Compounding. And no, it's not just about numbers. It's about building the kind of life that doesn't fall apart when the storms come. It's about stacking small wins, about leveraging every lesson, about rising every day, even in the mundane, and knowing this choice matters. This habit matters. This seed I plant today is shaping my tomorrow. So don't stop here. Click on the next video now. Let me show you how the same spiritual truths you've discovered in this fire can be used to create the wealthy, purposeful, and peaceful life God's been preparing you for all along. Because this pain wasn't wasted, it was preparation. And now, you're ready, not just to understand life differently, but to live it differently. And from here, everything changes.